Now, I don't know where you stand when it comes to art. Maybe I've got it all completely wrong. And when I went to the Van Gogh Museum, I found myself going, I mean, yeah, all right, he can do a better job than me. But is it a lot of hype? Is it because he's famous that his artwork is worth so much money? And we're talking millions of pounds. We're not talking a few £100. But when I saw an article about this lady we're about to bring on, I was bowled over. And she's called Emma Towers Evans, and she joins us right now. Good morning, Emma.
Hi, Gareth. How you doing?
I'm very well, and it's brilliant to have you here because we love to showcase people who have got a God-given talent, and boy, oh boy, if you've got one of those. You'll be able to see this video back later, and you'll see in the background what I can see, but some of Emma's original work. And it's just, I mean, what brought this to light is the article I read. You said that anybody can draw. Now, I'm going to argue the toss here a little bit because what's classed as anybody can draw?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, what's classed as anybody can draw? I think anybody can learn to draw even to a standard that they wouldn't believe that they could draw to. And it's just a case of knowing how to do it. It's like many things, like when you see a concert pianist on stage at the Royal Albert Hall and you go, gosh, how can you do that? It starts somewhere. They start with Mary Had a Little Lamb, right?
Yeah.
And then
Been there, done that.
Yeah, right. We all have. We've all sort of had a tinkle on the piano and learnt a little bit. It's the same with drawing. And actually, if I think back to when I was very little, probably age 3, what my mom got me doing was she got some greaseproof paper out the kitchen and put it over some picture books that I loved, and I used to trace them. And by doing that, I was just learning how to control the pencil. And then from there, because that's a big thing I think a lot of people struggle with actually, is just pencil control. And once you can control it, you can actually create things more easily. Like with the piano, if you can control your fingers more easily, you can more easily play Mary Had a Little Lamb or whatever it is you want to play.
With 2 hands rather than just one.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned your mum there. Do you come from a background of artists? Can she draw as well?
My family are very creative. None of them are professional artists. My dad's pretty good at drawing. My mom's really crafty. You know, she spins her own wool and knits and does all that. And then my siblings are all quite musical, and a couple of my siblings like to draw. I think I'm the only professional artist in the family, but yeah, I've got a fairly creative family.
You think? I love the fact that somewhere there's some distant cousin who's going, that's what you think, Emma. I've been doing this for 35 years. But what is incredible is that I asked you off there, and I'm always cautious about how deep I get into a conversation when we're not on the radio, because I know that I'll end up asking everything and then it will go a little bit dry. And I know the answers, but the listeners don't. And you've been through it already. But you were telling me about how you almost warm up, and you sat there and you held up a piece of paper, which is just squiggles. Is that where you start? Is that how you learn to control the pencil?
It's one place that you can start. I often get asked I do live streaming on TikTok pretty much every day, actually. And often I get asked by people when they go, oh, I don't know what to draw, or I don't know how to draw, or whatever. And the first thing I always say to people is pick up a pencil. And like, even if you haven't got hands, like there are people who are very accomplished artists who paint and draw with their feet, or like holding a pencil in their mouth. Pick up the pencil, however you choose to do so, and just put it on the paper. And it doesn't matter what comes out. Just put it down on the paper, scribble. I literally scribble, like, honestly, they are scribbles in my sketchbooks as a way to just get things moving. And then once you're moving, it's easier to, an example I often give is if you go out for a walk, it's much easier to go for a run if you're already out for a walk. You've got outside, you've got your clothes on, you've got your shoes on, you're out for the walk. You could then run. If you're sat on the sofa drinking a cup of tea, it's much harder to convince yourself to go out for a run. And it's the same with drawing. If you're stuck for ideas, it's much harder to actually think of ideas if you're just sitting there looking at your sketchbook going, oh, I don't know what to do, or oh, I can't draw. Whereas if you pick up the pencil and you put it on the paper and you just scribble, that's the first step. And of course, it's not as simple as you start scribbling and then voila, you've created a masterpiece, but it's the first step in a process.
I've always wondered what's in an artist's sketchbook and when does something in the sketchbook become a proper piece? And the reason I ask this is because I live a few, I suppose you could say a few streets down from where Lowry used to live.
All right.
And it was always my hope, because him and my grandma, they were friends. Name dropping there or what, but we always hope, because he was famous for cigarette cards, and he would just do the odd scribble on them and then give them to people. And we did hope that when we emptied my grandma's house, there'd be some Lowry original. There never was, but he used to have a sketchbook, and I'm intrigued and interested, I suppose. When does something from the sketchbook become a proper piece, or is it just ideas that go on in there?
Well, yeah, so my sketchbooks, often if I'm sketching, it's not so much ideas as it is just practice. So I'll draw things around me, I'll draw plants and people, or I'll just scribble, or I'll make things up. Because what I do, to explain to the listeners, actually, what I create is called hyperrealism, which is where you create a drawing or a painting that actually looks real. I work predominantly in pencil, and I guess if people want to see what I'm talking about, I'm on Instagram and TikTok. My handle is ETE Portraits, so they can get an idea of what I'm talking about there. But with hyperrealism, what you actually do, or what I actually do, is sometimes I'll sketch things down, but they are very bad drawings. Like, they're not good. It's just like a circle.
Yeah, but hold on. When you say you're very bad, is that my very bad? This is the difference, isn't it, really? Because when say, a professional football player has a bad game, it's not like if I have a bad game.
I mean, yeah, what I mean by very bad is it's a 10-second sketch, and it doesn't matter how good you are at drawing, 10 seconds, it's not very long, but I just sketch like.
Can we see one of those now? Because I'm really interested to see one of your bad drawings. I'm interested to see what's in your sketchbook.
This is a drawing of my cat that took 30 seconds.
Yeah, that is quite rubbish, isn't it? No, I'm only joking, of course. No, but still, you see that there, and that has got it. You can tell, first of all, that it's a cat. If I did something like that, you wouldn't tell it's a cat. But still, having a look at that, you can see that that's been done by somebody who can draw, because of, I guess, the way you've seen the cat as opposed to how I would see the cat. Sure.
I guess the main difference is, as well, though, is I've probably drawn more cats than you, so I would know how to go about it. This is a conversation I often end up having with people, is they go, "Oh, but I couldn't draw it like that." But it's like, how many times have you done it?
Well, but again, this is the thing, isn't it, where I think that we can all learn to do something okay. So if I took up drawing now and we did this interview again this time in 2 years, I'm sure I'd be a bit better, but I don't think I'd be on your level. It's the same, like, it wouldn't matter how many times I play snooker. I wouldn't be able to be a Stephen Hendry. I wouldn't be able to play football at Man United, but I'd be all right.
Maybe. I think, and I think people often surprise themselves. I think a big part of it just comes down to time. How much time do you actually put into it? So, for instance, obviously I'm a professional artist, so I do a lot of drawing, but I'm drawing for 7 hours a day. So
7 hours a day?
Yeah, because it's my job. Like, if someone turns up to work, how many hours work do they do a day? They go to work 7 hours a day. So I'm turning up to work and I'm doing 7 hours drawing a day.
You must always be at the bin sharpening pencils. You must be 7 hours a day.
I have an electric pencil sharpener to speed things up, because I used to spend hours a day sharpening pencils with a manual sharpener, and now I have one that does it in 2 seconds. It just goes done. Yes.
It's really amazing, this. And one thing that stood out to me is one of your videos I watched, you did a guide on, I think it was layers. Is that right? Where you were drawing something. And again, if you look at Emma's work, you'll see what we mean by this, where if you draw a face, Emma would draw it and you'd put shadows in. you'd know that people's faces, such as if you've got a beard, there's different shades in the beard. Now, I would just get a pen and go, there's the beard there, all the same color, all the same length, but it's not like that. And just explain to us what you mean by layers. So you start and then you add another layer and you keep on going and almost building it up like a 3D picture.
Exactly. It's actually the term that I've heard it get called is two-dimensional sculpting. So if you imagine a block of concrete or rock or whatever, if you were a sculptor, you'd start by like the basic shape and then you'd keep chiseling into it and refining. It's similar with pencils. So the first layer would be like plotting the outline. And there are lots of ways you can plot an outline. Often when an artist does an outline, it's not just like they just miraculously do it. They use tools. They use plumb lines, which is like a piece of string to see the horizontal, and they'll use tools anyway. So you plot the outline, and then after I've plotted the outline, I'll start marking in things like shadows, like the shadows under your eyes or the shadows around your nose. And then I'll blend those shadows. And then from there, I just keep building up on top of that. So I'll do another layer where I'll add like the mid-tones, which is the kind of the bulk of the skin tone. And then on top of that, I'll use a little fine eraser and actually start erasing away things like the highlights or like the sparkle in the eyes and that kind of thing. And then once we've got 6 or 7 layers into building up all this tone, you then start adding in all the little details on top. So sometimes a drawing might have 10 or 15 layers of graphite actually physically stacked on top of each other, building up this two-dimensional sculpture, if that makes sense.
Sort of. It does and it doesn't, but that's because it's your industry. I mean,
course, yeah.
If I was to talk you through, and this would be very boring, so I wouldn't do this, but if I was to talk you through how the mixing desk works, you'd be thinking, I sort of understand that this does that and that does that, but I'm still amazed by it all. It's incredible. And to your friends, it must be a nightmare because you're constantly sort of analysing their faces and going, got a little pimple there. And if I was to draw you, then I'd do it in this shade.
Funnily enough, no. That's the thing. Only when I actually draw people. So this person I'm drawing right now actually is a friend of mine. I often draw my friends because they're it's more easy to draw someone that you know because you can get a hold of them and photograph them and do all this stuff. Once I'm drawing someone, yes, of course, I'm analysing every part of their face because I have to draw it. But when I'm talking to someone, I'm not going around day to day sort of scanning the world with ultra detailed eyes and everything.
You mentioned about you drawing your friends. Is that just because they want a freebie from you? Is this how it works?
Yeah, I'm a con woman. No, it's easy to draw my friends because the drawing always starts with a photo shoot, and I'll use about 6 or 7 different reference photos. And photo shoots are much easier for me to do with somebody who I know, because sometimes they take 2 or 3 hours, and I'm asking people to do strange things like hold a skull on top of their head or, you know, whatever. So when you know the person, you have a relationship with them, I find I get better results. But that's just me. I know other artists who will like use models, like professional models, that kind of thing.
Have you ever had an experience where you've been commissioned to do something and you've spent ages on it and you don't like it? Are they ever honest and say, I don't like it?
Me, truthfully, I don't like any of them. And that's
yes, but that is how creative people are.
Yeah.
And there's something beautiful about that, because you wouldn't want you to come on now and start saying, look at my work, isn't it fabulous? But I mean, have you done a grand reveal to somebody who's commissioned you to do a picture and you can tell in the face that they don't quite like it?
Oh, what? The person who's commissioned me? Oh, I mean, I don't do very many commissions anymore. But no, thing is with commissions, the way they've often worked when I did them in the past is someone would send me a photo that they really love, and then I'd kind of bring that photo to life. So they already like what I'm going to do because they like the photo that they've sent, and the drawing is always going to very closely resemble the photo. So I think I've been pretty fortunate in that I've never done a commission for someone and they've been mortified at the result.
Unless, of course, anyway. Well, unless, of course, it's like the British attitude of when you have a bad haircut and the barber shows the mirrors. You never go, Do you know, you've absolutely wrecked my hair. Thank you very much. And I'm not paying for that. We're so British. It's a case of, yes, thank you for making me look like a Muppet. That looks fabulous. And
It's true.
you were mentioning that there'll be some pictures that you maybe don't like as much as the others, or you've done it and you think, I don't know, I don't quite like that. And I watched an interesting program a while ago where, and it happens a lot on canvases and oil paintings, when this was hundreds of years ago, where they scan it and they discover that there's another picture underneath that one because the artist had done it. And because canvases weren't cheap, they thought, well, what do I do with it now? And they just basically put black, I presume black paint all over it, and then they start again. You can't do that, can you? Because it's in pencil. You have got a rubber, but surely if you start messing around with the person's chin, then all the other things go a bit wonky.
Yeah, you've got to get it right. With pencil, the main thing is the paper is very susceptible to showing. The moment you erase something, it shows it. So the key, certainly with hyperrealism, which is what I'm specializing in, the key is certainly to just get it right from the beginning through to the end, which sounds very daunting, but once you've done it quite a few times, you learn that it's just a case of going slowly and being really considered with each step. So it's quite a different process to oil painting, where they'll, back a long time ago, they would, yes, certainly have done like an underdrawing in charcoal, but then they would have possibly changed their minds and they'd have just drawn over it and done something else. But yeah, with pencil, you've got to just kind of put it down and go with it. I often embrace mistakes as well. If I do something wrong, I just roll with it, which is character building also.
Presumably. And I could talk to you for ages. I really could, because there's a list of questions. I think I probably asked maybe about, let's have a look. I think I've asked maybe about 3 of the questions I had lined up. So we won't keep you forever, I promise. But this is so interesting, just speaking to a person whose professional job it is to actually draw. I think it's amazing. And again, have a look at Emma online. She's on the socials, she's on TikTok, and you can actually see her do it. And you can see this blank piece of paper end up as an incredible picture. Emma Towers Evans, if you search, then it will bring up all the handles you need for this. But in regards to paper, do you go for real high quality paper? I mean, I don't imagine that you'd go to Asda and you'd buy, 300 pieces of paper and you do professional work on those.
Yeah, so paper's an interesting one. You can definitely, if you're just learning to draw, you can draw on anything. And actually, some of my sketchbook stuff, like this I showed you when we were off the air, is on the back of some old sheet music. Like, you can just draw on anything, like really. You can draw on anything. When you're doing it professionally, yes, it's very important that the paper is high quality, mainly because there's this thing with paper where it wants to be acid free. When you come across a really old piece of paper and it's gone yellow,
yes,
that's got acid in it. So acid free paper doesn't do that, and it basically just means the paper's going to last a lot longer. So yeah, I do use expensive paper, but it's mainly because it needs to, when someone buys a piece of art, they'll spend a lot of money on a piece of art and they'd be fairly annoyed if in 15 years time it's gone yellow and started falling apart. So
and what about the pencils as well? Because I remember when my art career at basically GCSE art, it didn't go very well. Clearly, that's why I'm in the job I am now. But there was all different pencils. There was the HB, there was the 2B. Do you use softer ones for certain parts of a picture and harder ones for other bits?
Yeah, exactly. So like you said, there's HB, B, 2B, all the way through to 8B. 8B being the softest, which means it's the darkest. So for really dark areas, I'll use lots of 8B pencil. For kind of mid tones of skin, I'll use 2B. So yeah, in a drawing, I might use 7 or 8 different grades of pencil to create the drawing. That's quite a critical part of it, is using the different hardnesses to create something that looks realistic.
And when you go to an art show, do all the other artists boast the type of pencils that they've got? Is it like a sort of, they bring out this case and they've got loads of them, and you dream of one day having this ultimate pencil case?
It's funny, you see it a lot online. People will have big pencil collections, but the thing with pencils actually that and the reason I love working in pencil, and the reason I love talking to lots of different people about working pencil, is it's a very humble tool. It's cheap. Like the pencils I use are not expensive. And actually, if you just had a set of cheap sketch pencils, that as long as you've got those different grades, 2B, 3B, which you can get for really cheap from like Hobbycraft or other shops, they'll do the trick, and they are the same fundamentally as really expensive sketch pencils. So it's a very humble tool. It's very accessible. And there's nothing fancy about it, which I absolutely love. And everyone knows what a pencil is. Everyone's got a pencil. So yeah.
And finally, you told us, and quite rightly so, your pictures, they sell for a lot of money because it's your job, it's your living, and you spend so much time on it, and it's something so personal. I mean, it's one of a kind, unless it's a print. But what I'm trying to say, of course, is that the original, somebody will buy that and they've got this, they can cherish it, and they can know that this has been done by a human being with so much skill. So what I want to ask you is, when you're famous and when people look back at your work in 100 years' time, and they think, wow, this is the one she did here. I mean, I couldn't afford one of your proper ones, but could you knock me up a stick man and just something that I can basically say that this is what you've done, and I can keep and I can cherish it, and then it can go in this Emma Towers Evans museum, and people will say, oh, that's in 2022 when she spoke to that northern bloke on the radio and she drew him a picture. Can you just knock me up a little small thing which will take a minute and a half of your time? Will that be all right?
I can certainly do that for you, of course.
And post it to us, and when it arrives, we'll put it on the socials and we'll say, here it is, we've got it. And Emma, thank you so much for your time, because I know you're very busy, and I know that when you're in that creative zone, you need to stay in it. So the fact that you've given us nearly half an hour of your time to explain what you do and how brilliantly you do it, we're so grateful. Thank you very much, Emma.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And just tell us quickly about your social handles so we can see you actually do these pictures, because, you know, I'm not putting it across well enough how good they are. You need to see them.
Yeah, this is the one thing with being on radio, is this is a visual thing. So if people are interested in what we're talking about, I do recommend you go check it out. I'm on all the socials, but primarily Instagram and TikTok. And my handle is ETE Portraits. And that's the same. If you want to get in touch with me, go to eteportraits.com and you can get in touch with me there.
Emma, you're a blessing. Thank you very much. And just quickly, what's the rest of the day got in store for you? Sharpening pencils, getting the right paper?
Literally drawing, just drawing until about 9 o'clock tonight.
I say just drawing. It's a very important thing. It pays the bills after all.
It's true. It's true.
Wonderful. I told you, didn't I, that it would be an interesting conversation. Thank you very much again to Emma Towers Evans. Check her out on the socials. Have a look. You can see her doing videos from a blank piece of paper to incredible portraits.